I haven't seen a Marvel show as talked about or as controversial as She-Hulk in a while, which is hilariously predictable, but there have been a lot of strong opinions on pretty much every side about the show. And now that it's wrapped up and the dust has somewhat settled, I wanted to talk about my thoughts. If it was really that bad, or if it was, even, dare I say, not bad. Who knows what conclusion we will come to. All I know is someone will be annoyed with me. Anyway, let's get into it. Spoilers ahead.
If you want to go back to your life as a lawyer, I respect that.
He doesn't mean that.
Going into She-Hulk, I had mixed feelings because the premise of a 30-minute comedy style for this new character felt like a fun new way to tackle what may be becoming a tired MCU formula, but when the trailers came out, as this thumbnail I made suggests, it didn't look great. And quite honestly, that's basically how the show turned out for me. From the concept, there was some fun to be had in the ways the show was different from the typical MCU stuff, but generally the execution of that concept still left a lot to be desired. I want to start off with the biggest positive for the show. Tatiana Maslany as Jennifer Walters is a fantastic addition to the MCU. She's very likable and charismatic and carries Jen's identity crisis about being She-Hulk and whether that's what people want from her and what she wants from herself really well. She's the highlight of the show, no doubt, and without her at the forefront, this review probably would have been a lot harsher. On She-Hulk's character and the vibe of the show, the other thing that I did appreciate about the show was that it was entertaining in general. While we'll get into the pitfalls of this, the show committing to having a comedy sitcom style rather than being the sort of half-serious, half-jokey usual MCU style is actually kind of engaging and refreshing. There's something charming at times about the goofiness of this world, and I actually didn't find its real-world parallels that cringy. Oftentimes when a big studio show or movie goes like, look, here's the internet. We know how the internet works. Look, here's a dating app. Aren't we relatable? It can come across as really out of touch and awkward, and I was expecting that here, but it wasn't that bad. There are moments that are super cliche and jokes you've seen before, but it didn't actively hurt to watch. What a compliment. The whole intelligentsia plotline was kind of an interesting angle to tackle this story from. There was some fun meta-commentary on a certain sect of the internet's reaction to the show, and on that meta-ness, I quite enjoyed the finale. It might be a little out there for people who are just casually tuning in, but hey, for a self-aware, fourth-wall-breaking comedy, that was a pretty fun way to wrap things up, and creative, and something we haven't seen before in the MCU. And it had some self-aware MCU digs in there as well, which was fun. With all this that I've said, it's this weird thing before I get into my complaints. While there are a lot of problems here, I did overall find it kind of fun to watch, and I did come back week to week wanting to see what would come next. So I gotta commend it for that. Now on the other hand, while I generally found some charm in the show and some moments that I thought would be cringy weren't, that is not to say that the show does not have some cringeworthy moments. Like, a lot of them. And a lot of just really bad scenes. I guess because it's such a silly comedy, it's easier to not take it so seriously and just go along with it when it's kind of bad. But there were quite a few moments where I'd be a bit zoned out watching it, and I'd kind of snap back and be like, wow, this bit is really poorly done. Whether it's some really cheesy, cliche comedy, or jokes that just go on for too long, or whole premises for episodes and characters that are just a bit uninteresting or irritating, or some line that's really cringy, there are just a lot of elements in this that aren't done particularly well, especially in the middle stretch. Like that wedding episode was a pretty rough one to sit through. I think maybe my overall enjoyment of the show could be something like that bed of needles principle, where if you lie on one needle, it'll be super painful, but if you lie on a bunch, it's fine. Because if a show had just had one of these elements or scenes or moments that was really bad, it'd stand out more and bring the experience down more. But because the whole show commits to this idea and tone and keeps just throwing all this type of stuff at the wall to see what sticks, all these over-the-top characters and ridiculous jokes and whatnot, when something isn't very good, it doesn't register as being as bad as if it were in something else, if that makes sense. And to be fair to it, again, there are some solid things in here for sure. It isn't all bad, but when it is bad and you start to notice it more, it's really bad. I realize I said bad way too much there. That's on me. Also, a very oddly paced show. I know it's a comedy show, so the story isn't as important as it would be in other more dramatic shows, but the way the story jumps from idea to idea, from concept to concept, it can feel very haphazard and disorienting and like it isn't one coherent show. Quick reminder here that if you're enjoying this video, drop a like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and comment your thoughts on She-Hulk down below. Also, after the video, check out my podcast, The Poorly Planned Podcast. Fun movie TV talk. Alright, back to the video. While we're on complaints, we can't very well go beyond the CGI, which, for whatever reason, I didn't think looked that bad in the trailers. I was like, this isn't phenomenal, but how realistic can you want a giant green Hulk woman to look? But when I watched the actual show, it was a different story. And I'm not trying to pile on to overworked visual effects artists. I'm not saying necessarily this is their fault. There are deadlines and budgets and whatnot. I understand all that. But But whatever the reason is, the CGI is awful in the show, and that's a big problem when the main character is a CGI character for a lot of it. She-Hulk just never feels real. You're constantly reminded when she's on screen that you're watching a show. There is always an uncanny valley nature to the way her lips move when she's talking, the rubberiness of her emotions in general. Even the twerking doesn't look real. My biggest problem with the show, hands down. The one thing that saves the show a bit from this is that it is such a ridiculous comedy show, and it breaks the fourth wall a lot, so you're already aware it's a show, so the CGI taking you out of it isn't as bad as if, say, the dragons in House of the Dragon look terrible, but it's still obviously not a good thing. And a lot of other elements also don't look great. Like Daredevil, for example, looks super rubbery early 2000s computer effectsy, which is a bit shocking for a project in 2022 from the biggest film studio with a budget of $25 million per episode. Also on Daredevil, let's talk about the MCU cameos. There are 4 main ones: Hulk, Abomination, Wong, and Daredevil, and I actually did think of all MCU properties to have sort of random cameos. This was a good one for it, given it's playing in that sitcom comedy world where having guest appearances from familiar characters makes sense with that genre. Yes, they take previously serious characters and make them more silly, or continue to keep them silly, but I didn't mind that really. Sure, I'm not a huge fan of this new Hulk or his use of the word bruh. That's a whole topic for another day though. The character, not the bruh thing. Bruh! But Wong is always a bit goofy now, and he's great at it. This twist on Abomination is sort of funny. It's not really that funny as a concept, but Tim Roth makes it work. And it's not like this is a beloved MCU character who's being ruined. Which, by the way, real quick, everyone's been acting like they love the Incredible Hulk lately, talking about how these characters have been ruined and whatnot. And if you want to say you don't like where this character is going, sure. But I'm willing to bet 80% of the people making these types of complaints have never even sat through all of the Incredible Hulk. Don't act like Abomination was your favorite MCU villain up until now. But anyway. And there's Daredevil, who I was a bit nervous about, because Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock is one of my favorite MCU characters, period. And honestly, one of the big reasons I kept watching the show when I felt like it wasn't that great. And I actually really liked his portrayal here. Yes, it is obviously a different vibe to what we've seen him in before, but I felt like they walked that line as well as you could in bringing this character into the larger MCU. If you're going to bring him into this world, especially this super silly part of it, you've got to change up the tone a little bit, otherwise it just wouldn't work at all. And I think they made him silly enough for him to fit into the show without ruining the character and stripping away everything he is. You can still see those Matt Murdockisms in him. And plus, it was really just a small cameo, so you can't expect that much character-wise. I assume in his more fleshed out own show, they'll bring back the darkness a bit and dive more into him as a character again. For this appearance here, I thought it worked really well. I liked their chemistry, not crazy about this new suit, but whatever. I liked seeing Matt use his lawyer skills. The shot of him doing the walk of shame might have been the most I laughed in the show, which surprised me given that I was worried about how they'd tonally handle his character. And if he just told me this happened without me seeing it, I might have been like, of course, they've ruined him. But it just kind of worked here. It was fun. And it was just cool to see him again. I miss Daredevil, man. Come on. It was great to see him back. When he took out those goons, it isn't as good as the Netflix Daredevil action, but it put a smile on my face. Come on. I'm allowed to be happy sometimes. Honestly, that was probably my favorite episode of the whole show. Partially because Daredevil was in it, of course, but it just felt like a more complete, well-done episode in general. More focused. Maybe having Matt or a character with a similar vibe to him in more of the show could have helped ground and keep it on track a bit more throughout. So overall, She-Hulk was the definition of a mixed bag for me. I don't know if I can say overall the show is good, because it has so many obvious problems. It has bad effects, at times kind of cringy writing, pacing issues, but even with all of that, it just sort of worked quite a bit of the time. I know my job as a reviewer of things is to explain this, but I'm having trouble here. There was just something about the show, maybe the charisma of Tatiana Maslany, maybe the chaotic nature of it where you don't really know what's going to happen next, maybe the lighter tone that makes it easier to forgive some of the problems. I don't know, but I found myself quite enjoying it at times and generally found it to be entertaining despite all of its flaws. Put it like this. Hawkeye is a better made show than She-Hulk for sure, but I would 100% say I enjoyed She-Hulk more than Hawkeye. Hawkeye for me is the MCU at its most generic, kind of fun, enjoyable enough, super forgettable. This, while oftentimes not good, was not forgettable. It was bad, it had fun, it felt like it was going for something, and no, it didn't achieve it in exactly the way I think it wanted to, but I can't say I didn't enjoy it in some way for most of it. Unlike Ms. Marvel, for example. I kept coming back to this week after week. So that's gotta say something. It's a really weird one, and it's super weird to rate a show like this after all of what I just said. I guess I'll give it a 6.9 out of 10. Here's my rating system, and here's where I'd put it in the overall MCU. Worse than a lot of these, but I enjoyed it more than some of them as well, if that makes sense. So, those are my thoughts on She-Hulk. What did you think of it? And how do you think it compares to the other MCU Disney Plus shows? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, my TikTok at BHLHudson, my Letterboxd at RealBHLHudson. Check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.